Welcome back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Sam Menzie. We've got a show for you today. First topic we're going over is the Tampa Bay Rays and their trade deadline, previewing it and just going over all the moves they could and maybe will make. So we'll be talking about that. Then we'll be talking about the Mets rotation and the situation that has evolved there with Christian Scott going on the injured list yesterday. Then talking about Robbie Ray making his season debut with the Giants, the Mariners' offensive troubles, and Alex Cora and his extension with the Boston Red Sox. But before we do all that, I'd like to ask you to please like and follow the show. We do get a number of questions from viewers to ensure that your question does get read in the air. Please use the link, gsmcpodcast.net. It really does help the show. It really does mean a lot, so thank you so much for that. And let's get into the show for today. All right, so the first topic I'm going to be talking about, of course, is, as I stated, the Tampa Bay Rays and their trade deadline that is going on. So let's get into that. So going into this year's trade deadline, the Rays are one of the league's most fascinating teams. There's been rumors percolating now for a few weeks that they could trade one of their star players, including Isaac Paredes, Randy Arozarena. Maybe they'll buy, maybe they'll sell lower kind of players and not go all in the selling and try to rebuild next year. So there's really a lot going on around this Rays team, and I just did want to get on here and talk about what they could do, what they should do, and what I think they will do. So I wanted to go over all that. So first off, I want to talk about, the two stars you see there, Isaac Paredes and Randy Arozarena. Now, Paredes is a top 5 third baseman in baseball, I'd say consistently one of the best overall hitters. Since coming over from Detroit 2 or 3 years ago, he has been just a fantastic hitter with Tampa Bay, and overall has been really one of the big reasons why this Rays team has consistently been really great. We always talk about how don't trade with the Rays, and I think he is mainly the biggest reason why. Because of that, the Rays a few years ago made a very questionable trade. I remember being online for that, and when I saw it, I was like, what the heck are they doing? This makes no sense whatsoever. The trade was Austin Meadows for Isaac Paredes. Now, at the time, Austin Meadows was a very solid outfielder for this Rays team, a corner outfielder who we thought was going to get traded. He was getting into the later years of his arbitration, so his contract was rising. So just simply put, because what the Rays' money situation is, they can't keep a lot of those players. It wasn't a surprise he got traded. Surprise who he got traded for. He got traded for Paredes to the Tigers. Now, Paredes at that time was a former top prospect who had never caught on with this Tigers team. Was always a 4A kind of player who would crush AAA, get up to the major leagues, not do well at all, get sent down, and kind of repeat that cycle over and over and over. And trading Meadows, a very good hitter at that point, for Paredes just seemed like a very weird move. And yes, at the time we all said, the Rays, they know what they're doing. In my head, I was still like, there's no way this turns out good, right? Well, it did. Meadows has barely played any games for the Tigers because of off-the-field issues, including his mental health. So obviously, that's not something to joke about. Obviously, a very serious situation there, so I always wish the best to him. But, he's barely played any games for them, and just looking at it baseball-wise, Paredes has been one of the best hitters in all of baseball. So the fact that the Rays made that move was really incredible. And now going into this deadline, where they're being very mediocre, there are a good amount of games outside of first place in the AL East, good amount of games outside of the wild card. It's looking like they are going to be sellers, and it will be interesting to see what ends up happening. So the question is, do they trade Paredes and Arozarena? Both are very good players. Obviously, Paredes having a much better year than Arozarena, who isn't having his greatest year, but still is, in my opinion, a very good, solid player. So it's not exactly something I think you have to, take into account for the majority of his future. I think it's kind of just a one-year thing where he's just simply put having a bad season. Really, nothing you can do about that. So you have that as well. But also with that the question becomes: do the Rays completely blow it up and trade one of these guys, or should they? Or are they not? And I think really what it comes down to is: are the Rays going into a full-out rebuild, or are they just selling for this 1 year? And if I was the Rays, I would not be trading Arozarena or Paredes. I think that they should not blow this team up. I think there's a lot going right for the future, and as much as this year hasn't gone great, I still think, future-wise, next year, looking past that as well, this Rays team can be very good. You look at this rotation, what it could be next year. I mean, guys who potentially be on the roster next year: Zach Littell, Zach Eflin, who we're going to talk about after this, by the way, as trade pieces, Brian Pepio, Taj Bradley, Jeffrey Springs, Shane Baz, Drew Rasmussen, and of course, one of the best pitchers in baseball, who has been out all year with Tommy John, Shane McClanahan. After that, you have some really nice offensive pieces as well. You have a catcher, Ben Rortvedt, who's had a really solid season here at Tampa Bay. Yandy Diaz, a great player who is on is on the restricted list as well, so we don't really know what's going on there, but hopefully hope it's all the best with him. Paredes, still a great player. Brandon Lau, always a very solid player. Jose Caballero having a very solid season. Richie Palacios having an okay season. Amer Dazario has become a really solid signing for this Rays team. Christian Meade, very solid. You have, of course, Junior Camarena, one of the top prospects in baseball, who will be up eventually. Again, a Rosarena's there. Jose Siri's there. Johnny DeLuca. Josh Lau. So there's a lot of still good players on this Rays team. So I just think because of the injuries they've had, because of the situations they've had, outfield that they can't control, obviously with the shortstop, I think that this year just hasn't gone right for them, but I still think they have a lot going right for the future. So if I'm them personally, I'm not trading Paredes or Rosarena. I'm trading guys on 1 to 2 year deals. You can get prospects back for that can contribute the next year. A guy in A-ball who is going to slot in as your 12th best prospect isn't going to do much for you. So I don't think you should trade guys just to trade guys, if you know what I mean. So if I'm the Rays, I'm trading these 1 to 2 year guys, you aren't going to be huge parts of your future. I think, first of all, Zach Littell and Zach Eflin, I believe both will be traded, to be perfectly honest with you. Zach Eflin, I think, is a lock to be gone. His contract really jumps up into the 20 millions next year, so I think the Rays would love to get that off their books and get a good prospect back for him. He isn't having as great of a season as he had last year in Tampa Bay, but I still think he's a very good pitcher, and I think teams know that, and I think their internal projections will show that, which will cause them to provide his value at higher than it is right now with the numbers-wise. Zach Littell, very solid swingman starting pitcher type. I think will get a good amount back in a trade. I think could is valuable to a lot of teams. So I think those two guys are definitely gone. And the relievers as well. The Rays just churn out relievers like it's nobody's business. So trading a guy like Jason Adam, Colin Poche, Garrett Clevenger, Sean Armstrong, Kevin Kelly, Tyler Alexander, these guys that are older relievers who have 1 to 2 year left in their contract or so, I think that overall those guys are probably likely to be traded because they just aren't huge parts of the Rays' future, and they get some good prospects back for them. So I think what the Rays' strategy will be and should be is rather than trading these big star players in Rosarena and Paredes, it should be to kind of thread the needle where you're trading these 1 to 2 year guys, calling up some guys from the farm because you can make any player great. I think it seems like with this organization, call up Camarena and try to continue to be the sustainable winner that you want to be for next year as well. And the interesting thing about the Rays is they've shown willingness to spend money over these past few years. Again, also, they signed Zach Eflin to the biggest contract in franchise history, 3 years, $45 million, which obviously 3 years, $45 million is probably a regular contract for most teams, but for the Rays, that's a big deal. They offered Aaron Judge a $300 million contract. Those are some interesting things, and I mentioned it before when I was talking about the Judge segment when I did that a few weeks ago. There's two guys who are from Tampa that are going to be on the free agency path this year and next year. Pete Alonso this year and Kyle Tucker next year. You want to sell tickets? You want to continue to have the franchise in Tampa? Sign one of those superstar players that is from Tampa and you can market around. I'm sure they'd love to go home. Pete Alonso grew up a diehard Rays fan. Favorite player was Evan Longoria, and is from Tampa. Maybe he isn't the most analytical type of signing because he's an older first baseman, but he'll still be a very solid player, I think, and he sells tickets. So I think those are something you have to look. That's something you have to look out for as well. Also, someone I didn't mention again was Yandy Diaz, who I wanted to mention. Of course, is on the restricted list, I believe, with some personal issue going on. We don't really know what's going on with him. Obviously, privacy is the most important thing to him, so I'm not exactly going to prod there to see what's going on. But also, that's someone I think could be traded. Diaz is a really great player and consistently one of the best hitters in all baseball, but he's 34. So, how long do you see him continuing to play at this level, and how long do you see him being an immediate part of your future? Sorry, he's 32, but still older. Paredes is 25. Randy is 27, 28. So, when you're looking at the Rays' future, you want to build around guys like Paredes, like a Rosarena. You don't want to trade them. I understand that the Dodgers have shown interest in Randy. I understand that the Astros have shown interest in Paredes, but to me, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to trade these guys when next year you could very well do good. I think the Blue Jays are gearing towards a rebuild with whatever they say publicly or not. And the Yankees, who knows what their next year looks like, if they lose Soto or not. The Red Sox, will they continue doing this? The Orioles story is going to be great, but you can compete with them. So I think that the Rays' future is still very bright, and there's a lot to like here. So if I'm them, what I'm doing is threading the needle, trading these 1 to 2 year guys, these older guys, and then gearing up towards next year with Paredes, with a Rosarena, 2 of your franchise stars. And that's what I think they will do in the end as well. I don't think they're going to really be big buyers. They're smarter than that. They know just this year isn't their year. Again, just going into the year as well, I kind of knew it wasn't going to be their year. With you had the Franco situation, which is so unfortunate for all the victims involved in that case as well. You had the pitching injuries, mainly to Shane McClanahan and Jeffrey Springs. So I kind of always knew this wasn't going to be a year. But again, looking at the future of this Rays team, it's really bright. I mean, going into opening day next year, you could have a rotation of what I would say would be Jeffrey Springs, Shane McClanahan, Shane Baz, Drew Rasmussen, Ryan Pepio. Even if Charles Bradley as well, those 6 guys. Even if you trade Littell and Eflin, you have the pitching depth to be able to not really feel the loss of that next year. So be very interesting to see that as well. I mean, first base, you could have Yandy. Second base, Brandon Lau. Third base, Paredes. You could have shortstop, maybe move someone over and then have Camareno and Curtis Meade playing either the corner outfield or the corners at the infield. So be very interesting to watch, and the Rays' future is something that is really on my mind heading into August 1st. So that is our first segment here, talking about the Tampa Bay Rays and their trade deadline. Moving into our second segment, which is going to be talking about Christian Scott and the injury to his arm, and just talking about the Mets rotation. So yeah, we're going over that, and we'll see you after the break. So thanks, and bye.
Looking for your daily fix?
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?